The sun had barely risen over the vast, rugged plains when John, a widowed cowboy, rode slowly along the dusty trail. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and the distant sound of running water. But it could not lift the heaviness in his heart. Since the day he lost his wife, John had wandered from town to town, never staying in one place for long. Every sunset reminded him of her warm smile, and every cold night echoed her absence. He felt alone in the world, as if the plains themselves had turned silent just for him. John's life as a cowboy had always been one of independence. He was used to long rides, tending cattle, and facing the challenges of the wild alone. But now, after losing the person who had been his constant companion, the open land felt emptier than ever. His horse, a sturdy brown stallion named Dust, seemed to sense John's sorrow. It walked quietly beside him, ears flicking at the slightest sound, as if trying to comfort its rider. On that morning, the sky was bright, but dark clouds slowly gathered on the horizon. John noticed the change but paid little attention. He was too lost in thought, tracing memories of happier times. His mind wandered to the cabin he once shared with his wife. He remembered the sound of laughter echoing against the wooden walls, the smell of fresh bread baking, and the warmth of the hearth in the winter. Those days felt like a lifetime ago, and he wondered if he would ever find that peace again. As the day progressed, the wind grew stronger. By mid-afternoon, the clouds had darkened into a threatening gray, and the first drops of rain began to fall. John knew a storm was coming, but there was no shelter in sight. The plains were wide and empty, stretching endlessly in every direction. His horse neighed uneasily, sensing the approaching danger. John tried to keep his spirits up, whispering to Dust that they would find a safe place soon. But as the rain turned into a heavy downpour, it became clear that they were in trouble. The storm arrived quickly and violently. Rain pelted John's face, and gusts of wind pushed him and Dust to the side of the trail. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the ground became slippery and treacherous. John guided Dust carefully, trying to find a small rise or grove of trees where they could take shelter. But the plains offered no such refuge. In a sudden moment, the horse slipped on the wet ground, and John struggled to keep his balance. He felt a sharp pain as he fell. The wind knocked out of his lungs. The horse scrambled, neighing in panic before finally stabilizing itself nearby. John tried to stand but realized he could not move his leg properly. A sharp jolt of fear ran through him. He had injured himself badly, and the storm was too powerful to continue. He knew he would not survive the night alone, exposed to the elements, with no one to help him. As lightning split the sky and thunder roared like a mighty drum, he closed his eyes and accepted that his life hung by a fragile thread. Just when hope seemed lost, faint voices carried over the wind. They were soft, but determined, calling out over the storm. John opened his eyes and looked around, barely able to see through the sheets of rain. Slowly, 3 figures emerged from the distance. They were women, moving carefully yet with purpose, their long hair plastered to their faces by the rain. They wore simple clothing, patched and worn, but they moved with confidence and strength. John could not believe his eyes. In the middle of the storm, 3 strangers were coming to help him. The women reached him quickly, guiding his horse to stand safely beside them. They helped John sit upright, supporting him as he tried to stand. Their hands were strong and sure, lifting him with care that made him feel safe for the first time in days. One of the women, with dark eyes full of concern, spoke gently, asking if he was hurt. John nodded weakly, unable to find words at first. The women exchanged quick glances, silently agreeing on what to do next. They carried John to a nearby hollow, protected by a natural formation of rocks that shielded them from the wind and rain. There, they built a small fire, using dry wood they had somehow collected despite the storm. The warmth began to seep into John's cold, wet body, and he felt a flicker of life returning to him. One of the women, Naomi, carefully cleaned his wounds and wrapped his injured leg with cloth she had brought. Another, Ayana, prepared food from a small bundle of supplies they carried, while the third, Luyu, tended to dust, offering the horse water and calming words. John watched them work with admiration and gratitude. These women were strangers, yet they showed him more kindness in one stormy afternoon than he had seen in months. They did not ask for anything in return, and they moved with a quiet confidence that made him feel protected. For the first time since his wife's passing, John felt the warmth of human care and connection. As the storm continued to rage outside, the women shared stories in soft voices, their words blending with the crackle of the fire. They spoke of the plains, of the seasons, of the life they had built together in harmony with the land. John listened, captivated by their knowledge and resilience. He realized that they were not only strong but also wise, living lives filled with purpose and skill. Slowly, he began to open his heart, sharing pieces of his own story. He spoke of his wife, of the love he had lost, and of the loneliness that had followed him across the endless plains. The women listened without interruption, their eyes reflecting understanding and empathy. Naomi placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, and Ayana smiled warmly, as if to reassure him that he was not alone. Luyu offered a quiet nod, her presence steady and calming. In that moment, John felt a connection he had not thought possible. He realized that these women were not merely helpers, they were kindred spirits who had found him in his darkest hour. Night fell, but the storm began to ease. The rain turned to a light drizzle, and the wind softened. John, exhausted but feeling a renewed sense of hope, rested against the rocks, warmed by the fire and the care of the three women. Dust lay nearby, calm and reassured. For the first time since his tragedy, John allowed himself to imagine a future where he was not alone. The three women stayed close, keeping watch through the night. They shared stories of the stars and the land, teaching John to see the beauty even in difficult times. John listened, absorbing their wisdom and feeling gratitude he could hardly put into words. Though the night was dark and cold, the presence of Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu made it feel safe and welcoming. By morning, the storm had passed entirely. The plains were fresh and bright, washed clean by the rain. John looked at the three women, realizing that he owed his life to their courage and kindness. He felt an unspoken bond forming, a connection that went beyond words. They had saved him from the storm, from injury, and perhaps from despair itself. As the sun rose higher, John knew that his journey had taken a new turn. He had arrived at a place of hope, guided by three remarkable women who had shown him compassion when he needed it most. Though he did not yet know what the future would hold, he understood that he had found allies, friends, and perhaps something more. In the heart of the wild plains, John felt the first spark of belonging since the day his wife had passed. And so, with a quiet heart and a renewed spirit, John prepared to continue his journey no longer alone, but with the care and presence of the three Apache women who had saved him and, unknowingly, changed his life forever. After the storm had passed, the morning sun warmed the plains, and John felt a renewed sense of life flowing through him. His body still ached from the fall, but he could feel strength returning with each careful movement. The three women, Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu, stayed close by, guiding him as he adjusted to walking again. Their care was gentle, yet firm, showing that they were not only nurturing but also skilled in tending to injuries. John realized that he had never met people who combined kindness with such confidence and competence. Over the next few days, John's recovery continued under the watchful eyes of the women. Naomi, the eldest and most patient of the three, taught him how to apply herbal poultices to reduce swelling and pain. Ayana showed him how to prepare simple but nutritious meals using what the land provided: roots, wild vegetables, and the occasional small game. Luyu, quiet yet observant, guided him on caring for his horse, Dust, teaching him ways to keep the animal calm and healthy. John absorbed everything, grateful not only for their help, but also for the sense of purpose it gave him. Each day, as he learned new skills, he felt more connected to life and to these women who had saved him. During this time, the women shared parts of their own lives with John. Naomi spoke of her childhood near the mountains, how she had learned from her parents to respect the land and its creatures. Ayana recounted her adventures hunting and gathering, describing the clever ways she found food and water, even in harsh seasons. Luyu told stories of her siblings, explaining how she had learned to protect and care for those around her. John listened intently, fascinated by their knowledge and courage. These stories were not just tales, they were lessons in resilience, patience, and respect for the world. John began to feel a sense of belonging he had not known for years. Though he had lived independently as a cowboy, there was something deeply comforting in the women's presence. He realized that for the first time since his wife had passed, he was not carrying the weight of his grief alone. Their kindness gave him the courage to share more of his own story. At night, by the fire, he would speak of his life before the tragedy, how he met his wife, the dreams they shared, and the sorrow that followed her passing. He spoke not only of loss but also of love, and the women listened with patience and understanding. As the days turned into weeks, John's body regained strength, and his heart began to heal. He found himself looking forward to each day, eager to learn more, and to spend time with Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu. He helped with chores around their small camp, gathering firewood, fetching water, and assisting in preparing meals. Each action, no matter how small, gave him a sense of contribution and belonging. The women, in turn, watched his dedication and gentle nature with admiration. They saw in him a man who, though wounded by life, had the courage to rise again. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a small section of their shelter, John noticed something in the way the women moved and spoke. There was a harmony between them, a silent understanding that went beyond words. Naomi would reach for a tool, just as Ayana handed it to her, while Luyu anticipated their next step without needing to be told. John realized that he was witnessing not just skill, but trust and coordination built over years of experience. He felt honored to be part of their small circle, even if only as a temporary member. The women began to teach John not only survival skills but also the deeper ways of living in balance with the land. Naomi showed him how to recognize medicinal plants and how to use them to treat common ailments. Ayana taught him the signs of changing weather and how to predict the best times for hunting or gathering. Luyu instructed him in tracking animals and moving quietly through the plains without disturbing the environment. John absorbed these lessons eagerly, feeling a sense of empowerment he had not felt since his youth. He began to see the world in a new way, not just as a place to survive, but as a living, breathing entity that required respect and attention. As John's confidence grew, the bond between him and the women deepened. He began to notice small gestures: Ayana offering him the first portion of a meal, Naomi adjusting his blanket at night, Luyu leaving small gifts of wildflowers near his resting spot. Though subtle, these actions carried meaning. John realized that he was not only learning from them but also becoming part of their lives in a meaningful way. He felt gratitude and warmth, emotions that had been buried under sorrow for too long. One evening, after a long day of work, John and the women sat together around the fire, sharing stories and laughter. The air was filled with the scent of burning wood and the soft sounds of nature settling for the night. John recounted a humorous incident from his past, causing the women to laugh, their joy echoing into the quiet plains. For the first time in a long while, John felt truly alive, his heart lifted by the simple pleasure of companionship. The women, in turn, shared moments of laughter at their own stories, creating a sense of shared happiness and connection. In the following days, John's recovery was complete. His leg healed fully, and his strength returned. Yet, something more important had happened. His spirit had been restored. He no longer felt like a man wandering aimlessly through the world. He felt part of a small, caring community. The women had given him more than safety, they had given him trust, understanding, and a renewed sense of hope. John realized that he had found people who valued him not for what he could provide, but for who he was. The women, too, began to notice changes in John. They saw the respect he showed for their skills and traditions, the care he took with dust, and the patience he displayed in learning their ways. Naomi admired his humility and determination. Ayanna appreciated his gentle nature and willingness to help. Luyu respected his courage and the kindness in his eyes. Each of them, in her own way, began to feel a bond forming with the man they had rescued. They recognized that love could grow not only from passion, but from trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect. As the days turned into weeks, John's life began to take on a rhythm. He woke with the sun, worked alongside the women, shared meals, and listened to the stories of the land. The plains, which had once seemed vast and lonely, now felt like a home. He began to anticipate the small joys of each day, helping Naomi gather herbs, sharing a laugh with Ayanna, and learning from Luyu's quiet wisdom. The bond between them strengthened, forming a foundation of friendship, trust, and unspoken affection. One day, while gathering water from a nearby stream, John slipped on a smooth rock and nearly fell. Instinctively, Ayanna grabbed his arm, steadying him before he could hurt himself. He looked into her eyes and saw concern, relief, and something deeper, a connection that went beyond friendship. At the same moment, Naomi offered him a cloth to dry off, her touch gentle and comforting. And Luyu handed him a bundle of food she had prepared for him. In that instant, John realized the depth of the bond he shared with these women. They were not just friends, they were protectors, teachers, and perhaps even the family he had been searching for. That evening, as they sat around the fire, John felt a sense of peace he had never known. The stars shone brightly above, and the quiet of the plains was no longer intimidating but comforting. He knew that the storm that had brought him to them had also brought him hope and connection. He had been saved physically, yes, but more importantly, he had been saved emotionally. The three women had offered him not just care, but the chance to heal, to learn, and to belong. As John drifted to sleep that night, he felt gratitude unlike anything he had known. He had been given a second chance, a chance to rebuild his life, surrounded by people who cared for him and whom he cared for in return. The plains were no longer a place of sorrow and loneliness, they were a place of learning, laughter, and growing love. For John, the journey ahead was no longer about wandering aimlessly. It was about living, learning, and embracing the connections that had come into his life unexpectedly but beautifully. By now, John had fully recovered, his body strong, and his spirit lighter than it had been in years. Each day brought new lessons and experiences, and he had grown accustomed to life alongside Naomi, Ayanna, and Luyu. The women were skilled and resourceful, and John had learned to rely on their knowledge as much as they relied on his strength and determination. The days had become filled with routine, but the routine was comforting. Together, they lived in harmony with the land, balancing work with moments of laughter and shared stories by the fire at night. John's confidence in his abilities had grown, and he began helping the women more actively. He learned to track animals for hunting, to move quietly through the woods, and even to set simple traps for small game. Naomi praised his progress, noting that he had a natural understanding of the land, even if he had not realized it. Ayanna laughed at his occasional mistakes, correcting him patiently, while Luyu offered quiet guidance, always present to step in if needed. John realized that their teaching was not only practical, it was also a test of patience, resilience, and trust. With each lesson, he felt a deeper connection forming between them. The women, too, had begun noticing changes in John. It was not just his skill that impressed them, but his character. He showed respect for their ways, listened carefully, and approached every task with a thoughtful attitude. Naomi admired the quiet determination in his eyes, recognizing a man who had endured great loss, yet remained willing to embrace life again. Ayanna appreciated his gentleness and humor, the way he made even small moments enjoyable. Luyu, who often spoke little, found herself drawn to his strength and sincerity, sensing a man who could protect, yet never dominate. One morning, the group set out to gather supplies from the nearby woods. The air was crisp, and sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. John led the way carefully, his horse Dust following steadily, while Naomi, Ayanna, and Luyu moved with the quiet grace of people fully in tune with the land. As they walked, John noticed the way the women looked out for one another. When Naomi stepped over a hidden root, Ayanna reached for her hand. When Luyu spotted a small snake near the path, John instinctively called a warning. The cooperation between them amazed him. He realized that he was witnessing more than skill, it was trust, respect, and a silent understanding that could only be formed through shared experience. During the day, small moments of connection began to appear more frequently. While gathering firewood, John found himself laughing at a joke Ayanna told. And for a moment, he felt a sense of lightness he had not known since his wife's passing. Naomi smiled knowingly at him, as if she could see the joy returning to his heart. Luyu offered him water when he grew tired, her gesture simple yet meaningful. Each act, no matter how small, strengthened the bond between them. John began to feel not only gratitude, but also affection, an emotion he had thought dormant forever. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the group returned to their camp. That evening, around the fire, conversation flowed more freely than ever before. John shared stories of his past, of the days when he had traveled across the plains with his wife, of the lessons he had learned in hardship, and of the dreams he had once held. The women listened intently, their expressions a mixture of sympathy, admiration, and curiosity. Naomi commented on his resilience. Ayanna teased him gently about his cautious ways, and Luyu nodded in quiet approval. John felt a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. Over the next few days, their bond continued to grow. John worked alongside the women to improve their shelter, repair tools, and organize food supplies. Each task became an opportunity to collaborate, to learn from one another, and to understand each other more deeply. Naomi taught John how to weave simple baskets, explaining the importance of patience and attention to detail. Ayanna shared the techniques of preparing wild vegetables and making them last longer, while Luyu demonstrated methods of tracking animals without disturbing their natural habitat. John appreciated their patience and skill, realizing that each lesson carried a deeper meaning about living thoughtfully and respectfully. During a particularly quiet afternoon, John noticed something he had not realized before. As he helped Ayanna gather herbs near a small stream, he caught her gaze and saw a gentle warmth in her eyes. Naomi and Luyu, meanwhile, were working nearby but often glanced over, smiling at small successes or laughing quietly together. John realized that their concern for him went beyond friendship. They had grown attached, and he, too, felt a deepening affection for each of them. Yet, he hesitated to speak, unsure how to address the feelings that were quietly forming in his heart. One evening, as the group rested after a long day, John sat beside the fire, reflecting on his journey. The plains had once felt like a lonely expanse, endless and cold. Now they seemed alive and comforting, filled with laughter, work, and companionship. He thought of the women and the ways they had shaped his life, teaching, protecting, and caring for him without expecting anything in return. He realized that love could be nurtured through shared experiences, trust, and respect, not just through words or grand gestures. The next morning brought a small challenge. A group of wild deer had wandered close to their camp, and the women decided it was a good opportunity for John to practice hunting under their guidance. They moved silently, demonstrating the careful patience required to approach the animals. John followed, his heart pounding with anticipation. He aimed carefully, recalling the lessons Naomi and Luyu had taught him. The deer, unaware of their presence, grazed peacefully. John felt a thrill as he successfully managed to hunt, with the women guiding him every step of the way. The accomplishment brought smiles and laughter around the fire that evening, and John felt proud not only of his skill but also of the teamwork that made it possible. Small moments of daily life strengthened their connection even more. John would help gather firewood while Ayana prepared meals, or he would sit beside Naomi as she worked on weaving or other tasks, exchanging stories and learning from her wisdom. Luyu often shared quiet observations, teaching him to notice details he had previously overlooked: the patterns in the clouds, the subtle movements of animals, and the changing scents in the air. Each lesson, each moment, brought them closer together. John began to understand that the bond forming between them was not just about survival. It was about life, learning, and growing together. Over time, the women began to openly trust John with responsibilities. He took care of dust, hunted game for food, and assisted in preparing the camp for changing weather. Naomi noticed his patience and reliability. Ayana appreciated the gentle care he showed not only to the animals, but to the women themselves. Luyu admired his courage and quiet strength. These small acts of mutual respect and support deepened their emotional connection, forming the beginnings of something more than friendship. One afternoon, as the group crossed a small creek, John slipped on a wet stone. Instinctively, Ayana grabbed his arm, steadying him, while Naomi reached for a hand to pull him up, and Luyu offered support from behind. In that simple moment, John felt a wave of warmth and affection. He realized that these women were not only protectors but also companions, whose presence had become essential to his happiness. He felt a growing desire to care for them in return, not only as friends but as someone who could share life alongside them. That night, around the fire, the three women spoke quietly among themselves. John, noticing the glances they exchanged, sensed that they were discussing their feelings, though he did not understand the full depth of it yet. He realized that the bond they shared was mutual, that their affection for him had grown as deeply as his for them. Yet, no one spoke of it directly, allowing the trust and connection to grow naturally through shared experiences, care, and understanding. As the days continued, the bond between John and the women became undeniable. He felt at home in their company, sharing laughter, work, and quiet moments by the fire. The plains, once vast and lonely, now felt full of life, warmth. John knew that he had found people who valued him not only for his skills but for his character, his kindness, and his willingness to grow. The connection between them hinted at something deeper. A love built on trust, respect, and shared experiences, waiting to be acknowledged fully in the days to come. By the end of Part 3, John had not only regained his strength and confidence but had become an integral part of the women's lives. Together, they thrived, supporting and caring for one another in ways that extended beyond survival. Their bond, formed through trust, learning, and quiet affection, set the stage for the next step, a deeper emotional connection that would define their shared future. Time had passed since John first arrived at the women's camp, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The plains no longer seemed endless and lonely. Instead, they were full of purpose, laughter, and shared work. John had grown strong again, confident in his skills, and deeply connected to Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu. Yet, he could feel that something unspoken had been growing between them. A connection that went beyond friendship. It was a bond built on trust, care, and shared experiences. But now, it began to reveal itself in small, tender ways. One morning, As the group prepared for the day, a warning cry rang out from the nearby woods. A group of outlaws had appeared, men from a distant settlement who had been hunting stray cattle and posing danger to travelers. John's heart leapt. Though the women had taught him many skills, this was a test of courage, strategy, and loyalty. He could see the concern in their eyes, the same concern they had shown when he first fell in the storm. But now, he was not helpless, he was ready to protect them. John quickly assessed the situation. He instructed the women to take cover near the rocks and trees while he confronted the intruders. Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu moved quietly but efficiently, trusting his guidance without hesitation. Their confidence in him strengthened his own resolve. As the outlaws approached, John used the terrain to his advantage, positioning himself strategically and preparing to defend not only himself, but the women who had become his family. The encounter was tense, but John's determination and the lessons he had learned from the women gave him strength. He managed to scare off the intruders without serious conflict, using a combination of loud shouts, strategic movements, and the threat of dust, who charged bravely alongside him. When the danger passed, the women rushed to his side, relief flooding their faces. Naomi grasped his arm. Ayana's eyes shone with gratitude, and Luyu quietly smiled, her trust in him confirmed. In that moment, John realized the depth of their bond. They were not merely companions. They were a family, united by care, courage, and loyalty. After the threat had passed, the group returned to their daily routine, but the experience left a lasting impact. The women spoke openly for the first time about their feelings, sharing with each other how much John had come to mean to them. Naomi admired his bravery and thoughtfulness. Ayana cherished his kindness and humor, and Luyu appreciated his strength and humility. Though each felt a deep connection individually, they also recognized that their bond with him was shared. They wanted to be honest with one another, to embrace the love that had grown naturally through their time together. That evening, around the fire, the three women approached John together. Their expressions were serious, yet filled with warmth. Naomi began, speaking gently. "John, we have watched you grow stronger, and we have shared our lives with you. You have become a part of us, and we care for you deeply." Ayana nodded, adding, "We have all come to love you, John, not in the way of friendship alone, but in a way that is true and strong." Luyu, her voice quiet but steady, concluded, "We wish for you to be with us, to share your life as we share ours. We are not asking you to choose between us. We only wish for you to accept the love we offer." John felt his heart swell with emotion. He had never imagined such a moment would come. Not only had these remarkable women rescued him, but they now offered their love freely and without condition. He looked at each of them, seeing the sincerity, care, and trust in their eyes. He realized that he had fallen for them as well. His affection for each woman, rooted in gratitude, admiration, and a deep emotional connection. In that moment, he knew that his life had been changed forever. The next days were filled with joy, as John and the women adjusted to their new understanding. They shared their lives openly, celebrating small victories and supporting one another through challenges. John took care of practical matters, helping with hunting, repairing the shelter, and preparing food, but he also embraced the emotional bond that had grown between them. Naomi, Ayana, and Luyu each contributed in their own unique ways, creating a balance of love, trust, and mutual respect. One afternoon, as they gathered berries in a quiet part of the plains, John noticed the subtle ways the women showed their affection. Naomi gently brushed a branch away from his path. Ayana laughed warmly at a joke he told, and Luyu offered him the first portion of berries she had picked. These small gestures, simple yet meaningful, confirmed the love they shared. John felt a deep sense of responsibility and joy, knowing that he had found people who loved him not for what he could do, but for who he was. The women, too, noticed John's growing devotion. They saw the care he took in every task, the gentle attention he gave to them and to dust, and the patience he showed in learning their ways. Naomi admired his steadfastness and courage. Ayanna loved his humor and thoughtfulness, and Luyu respected his humility and dedication. Together, the four of them created a life built on love, mutual respect, and shared experiences. Their bond was not only emotional, but practical. A partnership in every sense of the word. One evening, a minor challenge arose. A small fire started near the edge of the camp, caused by a stray spark from their cooking. John and the women acted quickly, working together to extinguish it before it could spread. The experience reminded them of the importance of cooperation and trust. As they worked side by side, their hands occasionally brushed, and their eyes met with understanding and warmth. These moments, simple yet profound, strengthened their bond and deepened the love they felt for one another. Life continued in this way, each day filled with shared tasks, laughter, and learning. John became more skilled, not only in survival, but in understanding the women's ways and traditions. He respected their customs, listened carefully to their advice, and contributed to the household with diligence and care. Naomi, Ayanna, and Luyu, in turn, encouraged his growth, supported his decisions, and shared their lives fully with him. The harmony they created was remarkable. A balance of love, respect, and companionship that made life richer and more meaningful than John had ever imagined. One quiet night, under a sky full of stars, John reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. He thought of the storm that had first led him to the women, of the days he had spent learning and growing, and of the love that had blossomed naturally between them. The plains, once a place of loneliness and sorrow, had become a home filled with care, laughter, and hope. He realized that his heart had healed, not just from the loss of his wife, but from the connection and love he had found in these extraordinary women. The four of them continued to thrive together, facing the challenges of the plains as a united family. John's bravery, the women's wisdom, and their shared affection created a life of balance and harmony. They respected one another's strengths, supported each other's weaknesses, and celebrated the joys of daily life. Every sunrise brought a renewed sense of purpose, and every sunset reflected the warmth of their connection. The love they shared was simple yet profound, a bond built not on possession, but on mutual care, respect, and commitment. In the days that followed, the women expressed their love in ways both grand and subtle. Naomi often prepared special meals for John, placing them carefully where he could find them. Ayanna crafted small gifts from natural materials, thoughtful and meaningful, reflecting her care. Luyu shared quiet moments of conversation, teaching John wisdom and insight while deepening their emotional connection. John reciprocated, caring for them with dedication, protection, and heartfelt attention. Together, they created a home in the wild, a home filled not only with survival and work, but with love, joy, and trust. By the end of Part 4, the bond between John and the three women had reached its peak. The emotional connection was undeniable, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the deep care they had shown one another through trials and triumphs. The story of the widowed cowboy and the three Apache women had evolved from one of survival and rescue into a tale of love, unity, and hope. John had not only found new family and companions, but had discovered a love that was strong, enduring, and shared among them all. Life on the plains had become a rhythm for John, Naomi, Ayanna, and Luyu. Each day brought new opportunities to live, learn, and share moments together. The bond they had formed during John's recovery and their shared experiences had grown into something much deeper: love, respect, and trust that connected them as a family. John now understood that his journey across the lonely plains had led him to a home he had never imagined he could find again. The mornings were calm, filled with soft sunlight and the gentle sounds of nature. John would rise early, tending to dust and preparing breakfast, while the women worked alongside him to gather herbs, collect firewood, or organize their camp. Each action, small or large, was done with care, not just for survival, but for each other. John found joy in these simple moments, the shared laughter as Ayanna playfully teased him about spilling flour or Naomi's patient guidance when he struggled to weave a basket. Lu Yu often observed quietly, but her soft smiles and attentive presence were reminders of the deep bond they shared. One morning, a plan formed in John's mind. He wanted to show the women how much they meant to him, not only through words, but through actions that reflected the love and care they had shown him. He gathered herbs, hunted small game, and prepared a special breakfast. When the women arrived at the clearing, they were surprised to find the table set carefully, the food prepared with thoughtfulness and precision. Naomi's eyes widened in delight. Ayanna laughed softly, and Lu Yu's smile radiated warmth. John felt a deep sense of happiness, knowing that the small gesture had conveyed his feelings. As days turned into weeks, John and the women began to plan for the future. The camp needed improvements, and life on the plains could be unpredictable. But together, they approached each task with teamwork and determination. John learned more about their ways and traditions, honoring their culture while contributing his own knowledge. He taught them skills he had learned as a cowboy, riding, roping, and simple repairs while they continued to guide him in survival, herbal medicine, and living harmoniously with nature. Each day strengthened their unity, and each shared challenge deepened their love. The women, too, made efforts to show their affection and commitment. Naomi prepared lessons for John on plants and natural remedies, teaching him with patience and encouragement. Ayanna organized small adventures, like exploring hidden streams or learning about the birds and animals around them. Lu Yu offered quiet guidance and shared her observations about the plains, always helping John see details he might have missed. Each act was an expression of care, reinforcing the love that had quietly blossomed between them. One afternoon, a minor threat appeared when a small group of wolves wandered near the camp. John acted quickly, using the lessons the women had taught him to guide dust and protect the group. Naomi, Ayanna, and Lu Yu stayed close, moving strategically to ensure safety. The threat passed without incident, but the experience reminded them all of the importance of vigilance and teamwork. More importantly, it showed John that he could protect the women who had become his family, and it reinforced their trust in him. The emotional bond between John and the women continued to grow stronger. In quiet moments, they would sit by the fire, sharing stories, dreams, and reflections on the past. John spoke of his late wife with honesty, but he also shared his hopes for the future. A life filled with companionship, love, and purpose. The women listened and responded with understanding and warmth, offering comfort and encouragement. They laughed together, cried together, and celebrated small victories as a family. Through these experiences, John realized that love was not just about words or gestures, it was about living together, supporting each other, and creating a home. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, the women approached John with a shared look of excitement and determination. Naomi spoke first, her voice gentle yet firm. "John, we want you to know that you are not just part of our lives, you are our family. We wish to be with you always, to share our lives as partners, as companions, and as loved ones." Ayanna and Lu Yu nodded, adding their own words of love and commitment. John felt his heart swell with emotion, realizing that this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when his life would truly become whole again. Without hesitation, John expressed his feelings. He told the women how much they meant to him, how they had saved him not only physically, but emotionally, and how their love had brought him back to life. He spoke of his desire to care for them, to protect them, and to share his future with them. His words were sincere, heartfelt, and full of gratitude. The women, moved by his response, embraced him, solidifying their bond and beginning the next chapter of their shared life. From that day forward, John officially became part of their lives in every sense. Together, they managed the camp, worked the land, and explored the plains. Each day was a combination of learning, laughter, and shared responsibility. John taught the women new skills, and they continued to guide him in their ways. Their life was harmonious, balanced, and deeply fulfilling. Love was not measured in grand gestures alone, but in daily acts of care, respect, and devotion. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing season. They celebrated the beauty of the plains, together, the blooming of wildflowers in spring, the warmth of the sun in summer, the rich colors of autumn, and the quiet stillness of winter. John marveled at the simple joys of life, feeling gratitude for every moment spent with Naomi, Ayana, and Lu Yu. The women, in turn, cherished his presence, relying on him for protection, companionship, and love. They had created a life together that was full of meaning, stability, and shared happiness. One day, while exploring a distant part of the plains, the group stumbled upon a serene lake. The water reflected the sky perfectly, and the moment felt almost magical. John, Naomi, Ayana, and Lu Yu sat together, enjoying the quiet and the beauty around them. They laughed, shared stories, and simply enjoyed each other's company. It was a moment of peace, a reflection of the life they had built together, one filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. John felt a profound sense of contentment, knowing that he had found a home, companions, and love that would last a lifetime. The seasons continued to change, each bringing new challenges and joys. John and the women faced harsh weather, unpredictable wildlife, and the occasional wandering traveler. But they always overcame obstacles together. Their love and unity allowed them to thrive in ways that John had never imagined possible. Every evening, as they sat around the fire, they shared their gratitude for each other, their hearts filled with warmth and peace. The plains, once a place of sorrow and loneliness, had become a sanctuary of love and life. As time passed, their lives became intertwined in every possible way. John was no longer just a survivor or a guest. He was a husband, partner, and friend to Naomi, Ayana, and Lu Yu. Together, they celebrated birthdays, marked milestones, and honored the traditions they cherished. Their home was full of laughter, learning, and love. Dust, the loyal horse, remained a constant companion, symbolizing the journey they had shared and the life they had built together. In the quiet moments of reflection, John often thought back to the storm that had changed everything. It was that day that had brought him to the women, that had saved his life, and ultimately had led him to love and be loved in return. He realized that life, with all its unpredictability, had brought him exactly where he was meant to be. Naomi, Ayana, and Lu Yu had become his family, his love, and his home. The bond they shared was unique, strong, and enduring, a testament to trust, resilience, and the power of compassion. As the story drew on, the group continued to live peacefully, their hearts full of love and gratitude. They thrived together, facing each day with courage, hope, and a deep appreciation for one another. John had found not only survival, but happiness, love, and belonging. The plains, once harsh and lonely, had transformed into a place of life, laughter, and harmony. The widowed cowboy had been saved not only from the storm, but from loneliness and despair, and in return, he had found a family and a life he could cherish forever. The story of John and the 3 Apache women spread among those who occasionally crossed the plains. But the true magic of their life remained in the quiet moments. The shared meals, the laughter by the fire, the care for dust, and the deep love that bound them together. Together, they had created a home that was safe, joyful, and filled with meaning. And every day, as the sun rose over the vast plains, they woke, knowing that they were loved, united, and ready to face whatever life brought their way together.